It's time for Reason.
Do you think that there would be a federal government in this administration right now if we have more states, whether it's Kansas or anywhere in the country, say, you know what, I believe that I'm going to go ahead and expand my Medicaid program and I'm going to look for federal aid in order to make that happen? What do you think they're going to say? As we're trying to limit some of these social programs with a Republican majority in both chambers and a Republican presidency, what do you think is going to happen?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. It is a Tuesday, hashtag Patriotic Tuesday, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation. Here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. What up? Welcome in. It is a wonderful day in paradise. It is a beautiful morning. It is a way we can get started. The best day of the entire week, as we're sitting right now here in Wichita, at least 64 degrees. In Kansas. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We got a lot to get to today. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I want to hear from you. We are on Facebook Live. You can leave me a message, shoot me a message, like it, share it, whatever you want to do. That's all right. 316-721-8255. Coming up on the program today, it is Tuesday, so that means we have our Wichita City Council member Bryan Frye coming on at 7:30 today. In the 8 o'clock hour, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, also state senator, and candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, Steve Fitzgerald. He'll be joining the program at the top of the 8 o'clock hour talking about the campaign. We may squeeze out a little info from his take on the legislative session that we just wrapped up with as well. So lots to get to. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. I don't know if anybody have actually watched this. Apparently, no one did because the ratings were actually really down. But it was, of course, another prime example of the elitist establishment left-wing hacks that try to tell you what to do while they live a completely different lifestyle. But over the weekend, I think it was on Sunday, the Billboard Music Awards that ended up, I don't know if you watch this. I don't watch it because obviously none of my type of music actually gets awarded. They actually don't pay attention to any type of my kind of music, so I just don't care. I really don't care about it. I don't care about the country that they say is country, but it's actually pop music. I don't care about actual pop music itself. I don't care about the fake rock and roll that's actually not rock and roll because it's like pop music. Are you getting a trend here? Everything seems to be all pop today. As long as you have that repetitive electronic beat behind you, then apparently you're cool today. And I just don't care for that. I don't care for that in any way. So I'm not into it. But they had the Billboard Music Awards that happened over the weekend, and the ratings hit an all-time low while the NBA championships or the tournaments or whatever we're playing right now, even beat them, which to me says something because I'm not a basketball fan either. And if the basketball ratings actually are higher than the Billboard Awards, then that really shows something. Now, we've gotten this when it comes to the Grammys and with the Emmys and with all these other award banquets and all these other big presentations of what they have and all these performances that they do, that people are tired of it because we no longer relate to the individuals that are receiving these awards. We don't. We try. We like to. There's many of them that try to idolize them, but we don't relate to them in any way, shape, or form. When Leonardo DiCaprio comes out on stage and says that we all need to start being aware of global warming and that we all need to stop using electricity and that we all need to stop doing all these terrible things that are destroying the earth while he's sitting on his 3rd yacht of the year, then we have a problem. And we don't relate to that. Because, number one, very few of us actually own a yacht, let alone 3 of them. Very few of us actually have a private plane that we get to fly around on and then turn around and say that we're using too much electricity and power and energy and fuel and so on and so forth, and we need to stop that for global warming. The hypocrisy of the left-wing establishments is becoming very evident, and the luxurious lifestyles that they try and live is a little absurd. While we're here struggling, and then they say that, well, you know, Donald Trump's a terrible person because he cut taxes for the quote-unquote wealthy and for the elites while we are benefiting from it. So we just don't relate anymore, which is why I think that we're starting to see a decline on the ratings of people actually wanting to watch this garbage because we really don't care. But they threw in, of course, some of the comments when it comes to gun control. They threw in some of the comments when it comes to trying to make the country a better place by becoming lovey-dovey and so on and so forth after the shooting that happened. And I guess, of course, they're always going to do that. And I'm sure that there were some attacks on Donald Trump. No, I did not hear the attacks on Donald Trump. I did not watch this either. But there is the headlines that have come up about them making comments on the Second Amendment. And here's what the story has to say. First off, Billboard Music Awards. Janet Jackson took home the Icon Award, and Texas-born host Kelly Clarkson railed on the lack of action on gun violence in America after the latest school shooting. Now, in the ratings, the adults 18 to 49, which is what they anticipate to be their prime rating demographic. Now, everybody has their ratings. Talk radio has our certain demographic on the ratings that we look at. And for whatever reason, talk radio, predominantly news talk, is a little bit older demographic. I think that we do a very good job on this show that we try and relate to a little bit younger demographics because I'm younger myself, so I can hopefully try and relate to some of them. But everybody has their own demos. The sports station has their own demo as well, predominantly male, I would say. Talk radio here on News Talk, we actually have a happy blend, about 50-50 women and men, which is really, really cool. We get just as many women callers on the show as we do men callers, which I love, and it's fantastic. So everybody's got their demographic. Their demographic's roughly about adults 18 to 49. The 3-hour NBC Awards top Sunday's prime time, but hit an all-time low in fast affiliates with a 9% dip from last year's previous low on ABC. A 9% dip from last year. Now they're facing American Idol again on ABC. The music competition series dived at 24% from its May 13th show, while the Golden State Warriors basketball team in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals on cable ended up triumphant when it came to Sunday night broadcasts. 125-83 thrashing of the Houston Rockets by Steph Curry and crew put Warriors ahead 2-1 in the NBA playoffs and put TNT in the top spot of all cable with a 5.8 rating and metered market results. That's up 26% from the other comparable games in previous years. Can you imagine the billboards? Now, why do you think that is? Probably because we have individuals that just don't care about what kind of awards that a liberal, elitist progressive is going to get and what their comments are going to be. I mean, what would you expect to hear when someone wins an award? If you watch this, maybe you can chime in on this a little bit. I didn't, obviously, but I have some audio clips here that we'll play. But if you won an award, if you were a musician, if you were a movie star, if you were whatever, and you went to one of these things, whether it's the Billboard Music Awards, whether it was the Grammys, whether it's the Emmys, you went to one of these things and you won an award, what would you say? What would be your statement? I want to thank God. I want to thank my family. I want to thank the producer. I want to thank all the fans for actually supporting me. I want to thank everybody. This was a lot of fun. It was a heck of a journey. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to continue on with what I'm doing. That would be the appropriate thing, right? And most people usually kind of do that. But when they start throwing in the political agenda, who are they preaching to? Who do you think that they're trying to reach or preach to when they make these comments? If they're saying, yeah, that's nice, thank you very much, but here's what we need to focus on. What are they trying to reach to you and I, the average Joe Show American? Because we're not watching. Are they just trying to rail on the same sounding board that they have with the other elitist progressives within the crowd? Who are they actually reaching? Janet Jackson came up, and after she won her Icon Award, this is what she had to say.
I'm deeply humbled and grateful for this award. I believe that for all the challenges, for all our challenges, we live at a glorious moment in history. It's a moment when, at long last, women have made it clear that we will no longer be controlled, manipulated, or abused. I stand with those women and with those men equally outraged by discrimination who support us in heart and mind. This is also a moment when our public discourse is loud and harsh. My prayer is that, weary of such noise, we turn back to the source of all calmness. That source is God.
All right, so that's a nice comment. Let's turn towards back to God when we live in a time of discourse and chaos and anarchy and everything. Let's turn. Okay, that's nice. But the rest of it, what's the point? The rest of it, we live in a great time when there's equality for women. Okay, you know what? That's kind of goes against the mentality of the rest of the progressives. That's kind of nice to hear. But when we live in a time of chaos, when we live in a time of that, what does that have anything to do with the music that she produced and the award that she won? Like, I just don't get why they feel like this is, when they win an award at a liberal, elite, progressive type of award banquet, where probably everybody that's sitting in that stadium probably has a net value of at least $100,000 or more of these artists. Maybe there's a few people up in the nosebleed seats that are like, I got to go there. Look at who I saw. Other than a few of those, who are they preaching to? Who are they talking to? And who cares? Because just because you are an artist, quote unquote, you make music or you make a movie or you make something, just because you have that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're an expert on these things and people are listening to every word that you have to say when it comes to some of the current events in society in the times today. Who's actually paying attention to it? Then you get Kelly Clarkson. And Kelly Clarkson, of course, had to make the ultimate comment when it came to the guns, when it comes to gun violence, gun activism, and what we need to do for gun control.
Before we start tonight's show, there's something I'd like to... This is going to be so hard. There's something I'd like to say about the tragedy Friday at Santa Fe High School. So sorry. I'm a Texas girl, and my home state has had so much heartbreak over this past year. And once again, y'all, we're grieving for more kids that have died for just an absolute no reason at all. And tonight they wanted me to say that obviously we want to pray for all the victims, we want to pray for their families, but they also wanted me to do a moment of silence. And I'm so sick of moment of silence. Like, God, it's not working. Like, obviously. So, sorry. So why don't we not do a moment of silence? Why don't we do a moment of action? Why don't we do a moment of change? Why don't we change what's happening? Because it's horrible. And mamas and daddies should be able to send their kids to school, to church, to movie theaters, to clubs. You should be able to live your life without that kind of fear. So we need to do better. We need to do better as people are failing our children, we're failing our communities, we're failing their families. I can't imagine, I have 4 children, I cannot imagine getting that phone call or that knock on the door. So instead of a moment of silence, I want to respect them and honor them. With tonight, y'all, let's, in your community, where you live, your friends, everybody, let's have a moment of action. Let's have a moment of change.
All right, so that's what Kelly Clarkson had to say opening up the event on Sunday with the Billboard Music Awards. The moment of action, that's great. What kind of action are you talking about? The moment of silence isn't working. The moment of silence isn't working. We need action. What kind of action are you talking about? Oh, of course, gun control. Of course, we need the action. We need the more students to rise up, to walk out of their class. We need them to be able to fight because we failed, right? This is kind of like the David Hogg kind of moment. We failed. The older generation failed us. They failed us. Why did they fail us? We need to take this action into our own hands. We need to do our own thing because we were failed by the older generation by keeping guns into our society, and it's a terrible ordeal, and therefore we need to actually take action ourselves and do something because that moment of silence isn't working. You're right. That moment of silence doesn't actually stop anything. Let's take some action. Let's arm ourselves to defend ourselves. But that's, of course, not what she's talking about, is it? Because if she did, the progressives would be running her off stage and she wouldn't be allowed back there, right? Your thoughts on this? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, good morning, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm just doing great.
Good.
Hey, I wonder how many armed guards they had present at that award show to keep all those rich people and the poor people in the audience separated and safe.
That is true. I mean, come on. We got the security guards at the front. We got the metal detectors. Everybody's going to be going through the screening, and there's going to be security guards walking all through. Not to mention all the really high-profile artists that are there probably have their own personal bodyguards somewhere around there as well.
And they're armed. And the thing is this, if you think about it logically, there are 1 million classrooms in this country. There's 130-some thousand schools of some sort. And you don't have security until really every one of those classrooms has an armed guard in it. Because, if you had 80%, 90% of all the schools with 1 or 2 armed guards.
Sure.
That still means that 90% of that building is unprotected for some part of the day.
Of course.
And when you get even more than that, the United States has been awful lucky. So far, there has not been a terrorist attack on a school in the United States.
Well,
it's happened in Russia. It happens in Africa all the time.
Sure. I would say that some of the mass shooters, though, would be considered some kind of terrorists because they went there wanting to cause harm, especially this last one where, he was really using even some explosives as well. So I would consider them a terrorist. They're mass shooters. They're nutsos. They're even high school students, but I consider them even terrorists because they want to cause harm. Because of being mentally disturbed, because of being upset about something, because of maybe a girlfriend or boyfriend breaking up with them and them wanting to retaliate. So personally, I would consider that being a terrorist. Got to take a break, 22 minutes past the hour. Appreciate the call very much, Jim. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. Your thoughts on this, the Billboard Awards. Did you watch it? Did you actually pay attention to it? Do you even care? And the political message coming from the progressives during events like this, not a big shocker. But do you think that's why maybe some of the ratings are down on some of these events like this because we're just sick and tired of hearing their propaganda and political BS while we're supposed to be just enjoying the entertainment of what they actually offer to us in society? Got to take a break, 23 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
28 minutes past the hour. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Hashtag Patriotic Tuesday, baby. As we roll right along, let's start off your day better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. That's the way we roll today on a Tuesday morning. Starting off your day, advancing conservatism on a daily basis. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. The Billboard Music Awards, they plummeted in the ratings. 9% dip from last year, and last year was a hit on the ratings as well. While even the basketball conference, which again, if you're a basketball fan, all the power to you. I'm not a basketball fan. I will never watch a basketball game, I don't think, really. I just don't care. They top the ratings. Why? Why is it? Do people not care? Or is the music really that bad? You never know. Come on. The music could just be terrible and people just don't want to listen to it anymore. Can I admit something? Can I ask something for a second? If anybody likes the mainstream stuff, maybe the hot AC, maybe the contemporary things, the hip hop, the new stuff, the Taylor Swift, I don't even know the new artists, the Justin Bieber kind of stuff, Justin Timberlake kind of stuff. I don't know. That doesn't it get old? Does it not get old to you a little bit just because everything sounds the same? It's the same electronic repetitive beat over and over and over with just different lyrics to it. Does it not get old? To me, I would think it gets old. At least with my music, with the rock and the metal and that sort of thing, it's all kind of unique because you still got the 4 or 5 band members that are all unique and do their own unique thing for each individual song. So at least it's got its own little unique flavor to it. You can't really personalize an electronic beat. I don't know. That's just my personal taste. But maybe that's why the ratings are down. Or maybe it's because we're sick and tired of the political agendas and the propaganda being spewed to us every single time that they get in front of a microphone thinking that we care about their political views because they make a decent song. We're done. Progressivism's dying, my friends. Bottom of the hour news coming up.
Patriotism is alive and well.
We were so excited when Donald Trump got elected that we weren't going to be bullied any longer. We weren't going to have people push us around. We're not going to apologize for who we are, and we're not going to let people walk all over us. We're not going to tolerate it because we're not the weak, spineless country that we used to be.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason on a Tuesday morning. Great to have you along. By the way, speaking about the music, we're going to shift gears here for a second, but if you know of any bands that you enjoy that might be worthy of dropping into the music rotation for the show, always shoot it to me. I love it. I have a few that send me music every once in a while, even local artists, by the way. There's some fantastic local artists, some rock bands that are around town here. Shoot me your stuff, man. I dig it. I love it. We got a few different rock artists that actually listen to the show and send me stuff once in a while. I love listening to their stuff. Really good. Shoot it over to me, Andy at KQAMradio.com. You can email it to me. Shoot me on Facebook, Facebook.com/Mid-America-Reason for the voice Reason, 1480 KQAM for the station, me personally, whatever you want to do. I love hearing that stuff. Shoot it over to my wife last week. She's not a metalhead in any way, shape, or form. She doesn't like that stuff, and I listen to it all the time. That's just what I do. That gets me excited. It sets the tone. It gets me pumped up, ready to go. That's how I have so much energy and get-go, because that's just what I enjoy. So I love it. Shoot it over to me. I love being able to hear all your music. By the way, I do want to remind you, we have a limited time, and we got an issue fixed. There was an issue with the email server, and it was bouncing some stuff back. I had heard from a couple of people where they couldn't do it. But if you want to submit your recipe for the cookbook, submit it now. You got a little bit of time left, just a couple weeks left. You get to be dropped into the drawing for the new pellet grill. Hat tip to Wichita Tractor for allowing us to do a pellet grill giveaway. But if you have a favorite recipe that you like, whether it's a dinner, a dessert, a breakfast, maybe a drink, maybe a barbecue recipe for the barbecue season in the warm summertime, drop it into our new KQAM KGSO first annual cookbook. It's going to be really cool. We're going to have both businesses in there with some of their recipes, along with gift cards and coupons and certificates and stuff that's going to be in there. But then anything that you want to drop in. And if you drop something in, then your name goes into the big raffle for the big brand new pellet grill from Wichita Tractor. WichitaTractor.com is their website. All you have to do is email your recipe at recipe@KQAMradio.com. Recipe@KQAMradio.com. Drop it in there. It's very easy. Send us anything from, maybe a bread. My wife makes one of the best banana breads I've ever had. It's maybe a banana bread, something like that. Drop it in there, just recipe@KQAMradio.com. You can email it to us, and then you get your name dropped in with the chance to win a brand new pellet grill from Wichita Tractor. There's limited time left to do this. It's running out of time, and I had heard from 2 or 3 different individuals that tried to email it, and it got bounced back. It didn't work. They reached out to me and said, hey, what's going on? I got it fixed. It was an issue with our email server, whatever weird stuff. So nonetheless, technical things, it's fixed. It's good. So email us, recipe@KQAMradio.com. Send us your recipes today. We'd love to hear from you. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name? Scott, what's going on, sir?
Well, when you get that city commissioner on today, maybe he can answer some questions about why the police themselves think they ought to be getting taxes from the citizens here for doing policing, when in fact they haven't also ensured or promised or guaranteed that they will also decrease, like, for example, the drug importing into the Wichita area or anything like that. They're not doing anything to decrease the crime. They ain't talking about a plan to decrease crime, but they're talking about they want more money and direct taxes from the people.
Well, I will. We can ask him about that. Now, I
know he's a melly mouth guy. He's not going to really answer you directly, but I mean,
I think that he'll give us an answer. Now, here's the thing, though. It's what we need to do, and what I can do as well, and try and get the police chief on to be able to talk about some of the plans they have for that, because it is an interesting conversation to see how they're going to be able to fight drugs. Now, look, I understand as well that Drug Task Force is a very hefty project, especially here. I mean, we're a straight shot up from the border. We're the middle of the country, and kind of things disperse from here. I don't know if you're aware or not as well, but other than drugs, we're also the number 1 place for human trafficking here in the Wichita area as well, just because of the fact that there's a straight shot from the border, and they see this as an opportunity to be able to disperse drugs or guns or humans or whatever from this area. So it's a big issue. Now, when it comes to a plan, and when it comes to that task force, and when it comes to the hefty goal of that task force, that's going to cost some money. So that is going to dip into a lot of taxpayer money.
Well, like I say, if they're going to do something as far as asking for money, then they ought to also have a plan or explain a plan where they're going to decrease by 20% or 15% certain crimes that are going on here. I mean, I know they're a corrupt group of people anyway. I mean, they're probably going to just try to put it all in their pockets. And, well, we had to run a few donut runs, so it costs more money to do that.
Oh, sure,
But,
yeah.
But basically, they're asking for money, but not giving you anything as far as like details of what they're going to do once they get this money, and it's very curious to me. You know, I mean,
well, I will ask you, just because maybe we have, I appreciate the call, Scott. Just because we haven't heard it here on the show doesn't mean that they don't have a plan. I mean, now, when you request money at the city level, county level, state level, federal level, then you have to actually have a proposal for your plan of what you're going to do with the money and what the goal actually is with that. So they have a plan. No, I don't necessarily know specifically what it is because I haven't talked to them about it. So I will definitely ask not only the city and city council member Bryan Frye when he's in at 7:30, but I would love to get to the police chief on and talk to him about that as well and talk about what we're doing. And not only him, but Sheriff Jeff Easter for the Sedgwick County Sheriff Department, and get them on and talk about what we are doing and what the goals are and what the plans are to try and fight drug trafficking and try and fight human trafficking and all these issues, because it is a serious thing. And I would like to see a focus on that stuff as opposed to more of the traffic violation stuff. I know the traffic violation stuff brings in more revenue, sort of thing. And yeah, do we have people that are driving stupid on our roads? Absolutely. But I'd like to see maybe more of a focus on that way. So it's a conversation to be had, and I appreciate the call, Scott, and appreciate the sentiment. Now, I'm not going to agree with you on the sense that it's just all corrupt and they're just going to pocket all the money when they actually get the taxpayer money to do something. I don't see that happening, and I'm not going to support that mentality. But I do want to have the conversation on what we are actually focusing on with the city and with the county and what our law enforcement's doing to make us safe. So appreciate the call very much, Scott. Let's go back to the phones. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Morning, it's Deacon.
Deacon, what's happening, brother?
Hey, it's a fantastic day out here once again.
More fun every single day.
Absolutely. Hey, and you were talking about your wife doesn't like metal.
Yes.
My wife can't stand it. And my go-to is, I sent you one of them, Hatebreed, Honor Never Dies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, but I get up in the morning and Hatebreed, in ashes they shall reap. It's, that intro, born to bleed, fighting to succeed, built to endure what this world throws at me. If that doesn't get your blood pumping, I don't know what's going to work on you.
See, that's what I'm saying. You get it. You get up early as well, and you're out and about doing your thing early in the morning. When I'm driving to work in the morning, and these guys laugh at me because I'll roll into the parking lot here, the studio, and they're getting out, and the news guys and the sports guys, and they're all getting here about the same time, and they'll hear the car thumping a little bit, and it's just because that loud, hard music is what gets me pumped up. Why I'm so cheery and peppy at 6 a.m. in the morning? That's why, because I got a 15-minute drive trying to get me pumped up, listening to something like that, and then I'm ready for the day, and it sets your mood, it gets you pumped. Look, there are studies, and I've read these on the show because people laugh at me when I say I listen to my hard rock and my metal or whatever, but there are studies that show that people that listen to metal are more productive during the workday, that they are their brain activity works as if kind of like if you listen to classical music, just because of the complexity of metal is really relatable to classical music, and that you can even see some of the stats to where they're more they're less likely to cheat on their spouse, that they're more stable and more mentally healthy. I mean, metal and hard music actually does very good benefits to you, and I think we should start a new movement trying to get more people to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I used to be a very violent person, and I started, just getting more aggressive in my music, and I got less aggressive in my everyday life.
I love it. It's your outlet. It's the way for you to be able to channel some of that frustration, right?
Absolutely. You get pumped up, you get it worked out, and you don't have, my thing, I wanted to get punched in the face. I wanted something to get me moving. And I use my music now, and it's fantastic.
Hey, I love it. I appreciate that, Deacon, very much. Yeah, I get it. I know it. There's not a lot of people that really get that. They're just like, huh? And they're laughing at me right now thinking I'm a dork. And yeah, the talk radio demographic that's just like, Andy, you're nuts. I don't care. I enjoy it. And but you're right. I mean, it is the channel for a lot of people. It is the outlet for a lot of individuals. Music is, no matter what kind of music it is, it's the outlet for a lot of individuals to be able to channel whatever emotion they're feeling, whether they're excited, whether they're frustrated. I mean, I have a good day, I listen to that to pump me up and get me excited to be able to jump up and down. I have a bad day, I go home, I listen to that, and I'm just like, all right, I feel better now. I don't know. It's very odd. Not that I necessarily want to try and win everybody over on metal, but I enjoy that. That's my personal little thing, and that's okay. A lot of people just kind of shake their head and nod and like, okay, Andy. I get it. I'm an oddball. That's why I'm in entertainment and radio, and that's why I'm not like in a suit behind a desk or something, because I don't know if I can actually do that. 316-721-8255. Let's sneak in another phone call here. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
David.
David, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, music gets you going. Who can argue with that?
Absolutely. What kind of music do you listen to get you up in the morning?
Well, a lot of times I still like the old-time rock and roll or some country. It's a mixture.
Sure.
Not quite as eclectic as yours, but
that's all right. But you know, some of the Bob Seger and some of the Sammy Hagar. Hey, I tell you what, some of the '80s rock. I mean, that's some of the best stuff that was made.
Yep. Yeah, it has some good stuff.
Absolutely. But of course, I mean, in the mornings, I mean, no one really necessarily listens to music as long as, you know, talk radio and the Voice of Reason's on, right?
That's true. Well, speaking of that, if you have a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
You know, in the past, it's always been real difficult to find out who to vote for in a primary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of the elections are handled, because people know, you know, pretty much that in Kansas that if you're voting for a Democrat, you're voting for a socialist, so they don't do that in the general. But
sure.
How do you know what to do in the primary? Because they all sound good, they all say the same stuff. Well, this year we have a vote that's helped separate the rhinos from the conservatives. So the people who support big government are the people who support freedom.
Sure.
And that one vote, we had 40 votes were for freedom and 85 were against it. And that was for the education savings account, where
sure.
parents, not government, decide where and how your children are educated. To me, that's a basic freedom deal where you're pitting the government versus the parents, and some sided for the parents and some sided for the government. And we got a lot of rhinos up there where they were Democrats and then switched the registration to run in the primary because they couldn't win as a Democrat.
That is very true. No, you're absolutely right. The primary, I mean, I think you agree, and I try and focus on this so much. The primary is the number one most important election we can have, because even though we vote for the party in the general election, who's actually changing the party? What does the party represent? That's all done in the primary. And you're right, we don't know a lot of times what the candidates believe in the primary, because they really talk the nice talk. They try and rally the base. They understand conservatism is the base of the Republican Party, that the more fringe progressive socialists are the for whatever reason, the base of the Democrat Party to get them riled up now. But will they actually do that in the general election and thereafter if they get the seat? So you're right. I mean, a vote like that really does expose, and there's a laundry list of different votes that we can use as an example on how they voted, what they voted on, and what they could do potentially if they get into another seat. I think we need to get back on David Losey. He does the Rhino Voter Guide for the state, and he kind of been tracking the last couple of years on some of the votes. But between the one that you had mentioned, between Medicaid expansion votes, between even the fact that people didn't want to vote for the constitutional amendment, or ones that voted for an additional $1 billion budget increase, I mean, if they're running for statewide seats, then it's pretty easy to be able to expose them on, are they going to uphold conservative values, or are they in office with the agenda to try and retract conservative agendas?
Yeah, and I think there's 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 votes that you don't want to get it too broad, because then there's ways that, I voted for this because of that or something. I mean,
sure.
You know, but if you get it down to 2 or 3 of them, I think that helps expose them, and that's what they hate the most. They don't want you to know what they actually voted against, and voting against parents is not popular, because there was no downside to that one.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And I think what we're going to do, I mean, we try and get on as many of the candidates as we can on the show going into the primary for all of the surrounding elections around us here. And we're going to have their voting records here. And if they've been in office, be able to say, hey, you voted this way on an issue. Why? And see if we can't start understanding what their mindset was, and see if that wins over enough voters to keep them in office or not.
Well, I hope you'll use that education savings account vote as a litmus test to help define them, because that is kind of a real key separation. Because over half the budget's on education, so that's the big deal.
Absolutely. I love that. David, I appreciate that very much. Good to talk to you. It's you're right. I mean, there's 2 or 3 issues that we really need to focus on. And if they're in an elected seat right now and they're running for a re-election, then we have some questions for them. And they have to justify and defend their votes, their decision-making, and let's see if that's enough to win over voters or not to be able to get in again. Because remember, these midterm elections are going to be one of the most important elections that we can have, not only for the governorship on the tradition of the governorship swaying back and forth and the pendulum swinging to the other side and then swinging back after another 8 years and going back and forth. Will we maintain another Republican for the first time in I don't know how long back-to-back like this, or will we go back to the Democrats in the legislature? How many Republicans in there are more establishment, progressive, moderate Republicans that have voted to repeal the Brownback agenda, quote unquote, and that have tried to go back to higher taxes and more spending and have voted for these things over and over and over? It's going to be extremely, and if we're going to change these, look, if you remember, we had State Representative John Whitmer in here just a couple of weeks ago for the legislative recap and encouraging the votes for the midterm election, because if we just swing maybe 20 seats, 15, 20 seats is all it really takes in the state to go from either Democrat to Republican or moderate Republican to a little more conservative, then we could actually change the tide in the legislature. We could actually get some really productive things done, and that's what we're here to do. So I appreciate that very much, David. We're going to be focusing on that a lot coming up in the upcoming weeks, going into the primary that's going to be here before we know it. It is going to be an extremely important issue. Take a break here. We'll wrap up hour number one. Lots more to get to. We had a little fun going down the music road here. I didn't get to half of what we want to talk about. That's all right. We'll get to that in hour number two. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number one. I can't believe it. This one's done already. Lots more to get to today. We have Starbucks with their open policy to hang out and loiter, one of the first businesses to actually allow that. We'll get your perspective on there. Plus, Google changing its motto. Could it be for the good or for the bad? Plus, we have some of the latest info when it comes to the expansion of Medicaid in the state of Kansas, the privatization of that, and the left-wing media progressives panicky about the way some of the directions are going here, especially when it comes to mental health in the state of Kansas and some of the insurance companies that are starting to cut back on some of that funding. So we'll talk about that in hour number two as well. Your thoughts and calls are always appreciated. Check us out, KQAMradio.com. We got a lot of promotions going on right now. You need to be aware of them. You need to be involved. Check out some of the latest and greatest on what we're doing as a station, KQAMradio.com. Check it out. You can also see the Voice of Reason page there as well, KQAMradio.com. Under the local shows tab, you'll find the Voice of Reason. Hour number two coming up in just a second. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
Do you think that there would be a federal government in this administration right now if we have more states, whether it's Kansas or anywhere in the country, say, you know what, I believe that I'm going to go ahead and expand my Medicaid program and I'm going to look for federal aid in order to make that happen? What do you think they're going to say? As we're trying to limit some of these social programs with a Republican majority in both chambers and a Republican presidency, what do you think is going to happen?
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Hour number two of The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker. 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side. KQAM simulcasting TV, KGPT TV. Channel 2610. What's up? Welcome in. Good morning to you. Great to have you along today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. That's the way we roll today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It's open lines to you if you want to talk about anything for the next half hour. Coming up at 7:30, City Council member Bryan Frye for the city of Wichita going to join us as he usually does on a Tuesday. Plus, in the 8 o'clock hour, retired Lieutenant Colonel, also state senator, and now candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, Mr. Steve Fitzgerald. He'll be joining us on the program. Looking forward to chatting with him, talking about not only the legislative update, but then his campaign for the 2nd Congressional District. That one up there, Lynn Jenkins retiring, and there is a plethora of individuals looking to run for that seat. as the Republican field especially continues to widen pretty drastically. So it's important to us, for us to understand what candidates are in there, what they stand on, and what they're doing. Yeah, last week we talked with Steve Watkins, individual, and to talk with him on the campaign. And now we're talking to Steve Fitzgerald. We've talked to Tyler Tannehill. We'll get a few more on the show as we get closer and closer to the primary vote. But until then, it's open lines to you, 316-721-8255. We got some individuals checking out the Facebook Live feed today. Good morning. Welcome aboard. We love having you on there. Like it. Share it onto your own page. Just say good morning on there. Leave me a comment. Call me a jerk. I don't really care. But we love having you on there. We do appreciate it very much. Even if you disagree. You know what? We don't have enough dialogue and discussion and debate on this show. We need some more. If you disagree with me, it's okay to call. You know me. I'm not going to chew your head off. I don't do that. There are other shows that do that. I don't. I'm a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. I am the, as I mentioned before, the eternal optimist.
Andy's optimism of the day.
All right, I'm ready.
I'm a very optimistic kind of guy. I always look at the glass half full sort of thing, even if it's, just a little bit of dribbles on the bottom of it. I always say, you know what, at least there's something in there. And I always move forward with that kind of mentality. Sometimes that gets me in trouble because, sometimes it really is that bad. But I always look in the positive side of things. For example, do you ever have a text message or a social media thing where maybe you're debating with somebody or you're arguing with maybe a friend or a relative or so, you're debating and arguing with somebody and they're texting you or they're messaging, or maybe you're not, but maybe you take it the wrong way and a text message that maybe was missing a word and you set a tone to it. And it wasn't intended to be that way, but you try and create a tone to the text message or create a tone to the social media message. You've done that, right? Everybody does that. You read something and then you take it the wrong way, thinking that they're being a little sarcastic or they're being kind of jerky, and you don't know necessarily what they're trying to get at that time because you didn't hear the tone because it's a text message and it's actual words instead of them actually saying it. You've been through this, right? Everybody has. You see a message in your email, you see a message on your social media, on your Facebook or Twitter, and you read it and you're like, oh, gosh, what a jerk. And it wasn't intended to be that way, but it already set the tone because you've created a tone for it. The media takes sometimes media reports from different candidates or different issues or different government agencies, and they create a tone. And they're not supposed to create a tone. That's the big important part that we need to take away from this. The media is not supposed to create a tone on a political issue. They're supposed to just report it, and you create the tone based on whatever you think is going to happen. Of course, the Democrats are going to say that a tone from a conservative is hateful and maniacal, and it's evil and it's terrible, while the conservatives that are looking at it actually see what it may really be. And it could be the other way as well. A progressive may come out with a tone, or it may come out with a message, and conservatives will take a tone to it. And that's my job. I've always tried to dissect the tones that we've created that may not be intentional, because I always look, and this is maybe why I enjoy debating so much, is that I always look on both sides to try and understand what they said or what they're doing before I go on the attack. Because I'm not going to attack somebody if it was the wrong tone, if it was something they didn't intentionally mean to say, if it was something that was a mistake, or if it was whatever. I don't go down that road. It's petty. It's stupid. I like to focus on the issues, as you know. So I don't necessarily create the tone of somebody's message they're trying to get out. What I try and do is actually try and understand, okay, they said this, why did they say that, and what was their intention? If you remember, during the primaries, Donald Trump would say stuff, and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Donald Trump said something like that. It's terrible. And then we created the segment.
What Donald Trump really meant to say.
Because we understood that sometimes he's just not as articulate as what he needs to be at times, and sometimes he would say something to where we knew what he meant, but it didn't necessarily come out that way. That's the same thing about a social media or a text message, about creating that tone of them not necessarily meaning to say it that way, but we understand where they're coming from. And it's also the way the media is supposed to be reporting certain information, but that's not the case, because of course the media are progressives, they're liberal, they have their propaganda, they have their agenda, and they will try and dominate and abuse and manipulate any chance that they get, to where when you read it as the reader and they report on it and you're reading their report, then you say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is horrible. How could they possibly do something like that? And that's exactly what happened when it comes to KANCARE, when it comes to the insurance. as there's a new story now trying to demonize the privatization, of course, as they've been trying to do for a long time, but trying to demonize the KANCARE insurance companies and the privatization of these plans. One of the for-profit insurance companies right there should automatically set the stage. One of the for-profit insurance companies, because insurance companies should not be for a profit, and if they make a profit, then holy cow, man. I cannot believe anybody would actually ask for revenue and ask for profit when they actually provide a service. It's crazy how anyone would actually try to fathom something like that, right? One of the for-profit insurance, this is according to, by the way, the Topeka Capital Journal. One of the for-profit insurance companies operating Kansas's privatized Medicaid program unilaterally moved to impose a 28% reduction in payments to an Overland Park contractor providing rehabilitation services to more than 120 people with traumatic brain injuries. Now, reading the first paragraph, you think it's going to be really about the end of the world right here. That this for-profit insurance company is cutting the payments to a contractor that takes care of traumatic brain injuries for individuals, cutting their payments by 28%. Right there sets the tone of this is terrible, that everything that we thought about with privatized health insurance is actually true, that they actually don't care about the patients, they only care about their bottom line, they don't care about the coverage, they don't care about the quality. This is terrible. That's the message that you're getting right now from the first paragraph of this story. Hat tip, by the way, to Tim Carpenter there, as we know the progressive mentality that he's got. Janet Williams, owner of the Minds Matter, say the company ran on a 3% margin and was unlikely to survive the steep rate reduction contemplated by the AmeriGroup Kansas. Quote, I think network adequacy, continuity of care, and most important, health and safety would be a huge risk if there isn't a trained and qualified provider standing by. Minds Matter currently treated 123 people with a brain trauma enrolled with AmeriGroup Kansas, but serves 40% of the 425 Kansans in the portion of the Medicaid program. Now, it takes you to page 2 before you actually understand the details of what's going on with the actual deal. Because the entire first page is the doom, gloom, scariness of there's a for-profit insurance company. It is a company that's for-profit. That is a terrible, horrible thing, and we shouldn't be having anything like that for profit, actually being able to provide a service and getting compensated for that service. And the rate reduction that's going to be paid to Minds Matter, this company taking care of people with brain injuries. And that's the whole story. And then, of course, the scariness of, we're not going to be able to survive. It's going to be terrible. It takes you to page 2 to actually understand the details of what's going on. Because that's my first question. Why? If that's the story and they're cutting 28% of their rates, why? And you actually have to look until page 2 to get that answer. The desire by AmeriGroup Kansas to lower its cost of care for people with trauma-induced physical behavior or cognitive brain impairments and judge capable for improving through the intense rehabilitation. So they're looking at ways to be able to cut some of their costs by selecting a few where they deem that they don't need necessarily the treatment that they're getting now, but they can actually get physical treatment in different ways. So they're looking at downsizing. Why do you think we're downsizing? I don't know. Look at Obamacare and the national health care system right now. So where it's completely expensive to be able to do anything, and they're trying to cut some costs because they're, for profit. And if they don't make a profit, then they're not going to be able to actually provide the service the way they were to before. Now, let's continue on. The state privatized the $3 billion Medicaid program in 2013 under Governor Sam Brownback. The contracts with 3 insurance companies, AmeriGroup Kansas, Sunflower Health, and United Healthcare, are all looking to renegotiate contracts. They're renegotiating AmeriGroup, the one that actually funds this mental health part of it and the brain injury part of Medicaid, and KANCARE in the state of Kansas, is renegotiating contracts. They're not cutting. They're not stopping. They're not walking away from it. They're working on renegotiated contracts. Whether the contract's expiring, whether they're just trying to review the contracts, it's renegotiating a contract. That doesn't mean we're just walking away. The doom and gloom fear-mongering of the liberal progressives needs to stop. because it doesn't help anybody unless, of course, you're looking at a political agenda, which is, of course, to non-privatize KANCARE, bring it back into the public sector, expand it, and be able to create more tax money and more revenue to be able to fund something like this, because we want a universal socialized type of healthcare system that's just not going to work. It's going to be a failure. And as we're trying to get away from that at the federal level, we're trying to do that again at the state level. And it's pathetic. And these progressives need to stop the fear-mongering, because you're never going to win when it comes to just scaring people into your whims. That is called terrorism. I don't know if we're aware of that or not, but the definition of terrorism is to scare people, is to intimidate people, is to bully people into a political agenda. And by creating a fear-monger type of situation, by saying that either we need to go back to a socialized public sector healthcare program like Medicaid and not have it privatized of an evil for-profit company who's wanting to cut all this money, and they're going to have to shut down, and it's going to be a scary thing when all they're doing is renegotiating a contract. That is called terrorism. That is called abuse, because you're not reporting. You're giving a fear-monger mentality to where you, the voter, are going to be, in their mind, hopefully, are going to be scared to death to where we're going to lose all these programs. Everybody's going to be out in the street dying. And then if you get some kind of brain injury, then you're just going to be SOL and you're just going to die in the streets, right? That's what they want to create, this world, this environment of fear-mongering. It's called terrorism. Overall, Medicaid rates from traumatic brain injury service in Kansas were increased by 3% back in 2017. Now, Senator Laura Kelly, running for governor on the Democratic side, Topeka Democrat, said the underlying profit motive of the United Sunflower and Amerigroup was a cause for concern. Oh, the underlying profit motive. Oh, there it is. There it is. This is what happens when you outsource your public health program for-profit out-of-state companies who are focused on the bottom line, not provision of services, according to Laura Kelly. The Democrats are jumping on board with this. Everybody all panicky about it. The progressives loving the fact that this is happening, because if you suffer, then that's a good thing, so they can promote their agenda. Let me ask you something. If this is so bad, why do you want to expand it? If this is such a terrible program, why do you want to expand it with Medicaid expansion? That's a question I have for you. I've never understood that. If you don't like it, if you think it's terrible, if you think that we need to expand it to where more than 400,000 Kansans are actually on the Medicaid program, if you attack the fact that we have backlogs, people waiting to be able to get on the program, if you hate the fact that for-profit insurance companies are the ones profiting by providing a service to individuals in the state of Kansas for their health care, why do you want to expand it? Doesn't make any sense to me. To me, that shows the absolute lunacy of the left-wing progressives wanting to expand a program they hate just because they want to expand it. Oh, we need more money. Yeah, okay, good luck with that one. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. 21 minutes past the hour. Let's go to the phones. Line number one. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, it's Deacon again. I don't normally call in twice, but I really got to say something here.
Go for it.
My youngest son has a supplemental insurance through Amerigroup.
Mm-hmm.
My insurance is primary, but he's got a supplemental insurance through Amerigroup. I have never had an insurance company call and check on their client, and Amerigroup calls to check and see how my son is doing. Wow.
I've never heard of that before.
I mean, this is a great company. I don't know what's behind the renegotiation. They got to stay in business. They got to make some money. They got to pay their people.
Right.
But I've never had an insurance company work as hard for a client as Amerigroup does for my son.
I've never heard that before. Now, I've never heard of any insurance company calling to ask about the quality of how the patient's doing and if they got their treatment. Now, I'm sure that Amerigroup has its issues, just like any other insurance company, just like anybody, because everybody gets different quality type of service. But it's really good to hear that they do care, and they're not going to just let people die on the streets. If they want to be a successful business that actually takes care of its clients, they're not going to just cut a bunch of people and say, hey, go die on the street with your brain injury because we don't give a damn about you. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, amen, brother. You have a great day.
I love it, Deacon. I appreciate that very much. You're right. They need to be able to pay their service people that actually process the claims. They need to actually be able to pay the people that actually takes care of the program. They're not evil, terrible, horrible, maniacal people that take your premiums and just walk away with it and pocket it and don't care about what you do. as a successful business, someone who's, I'm assuming, relatively successful because they've actually been in business for a while, actually understands that in order to maintain customers, that you have some form of quality of service. That's the way the private sector works. Now, let's take it to the other side, and let's say that everything was on the public level, and it was through taxpayer money, and it was through the government. Do you think you're going to get any quality of service because you have no other choice to go anywhere else? Do you think that you're going to have people saying, I'm so glad that you're doing well, and calling you like, you know what, how is your service? How is your treatment? How is they doing? How are they being taken care of? So glad things are going well. Do you think you're going to get that from a government official? Do you get that from the DMV? Yes. I saw you came in and you renewed your driver's license. How is your service today? Really? You going to get that? Pretty sure you don't. Pretty sure you don't. You're going to get it from a private company. Why? Because they want repeat business. Funny how that works, right? 316-721-8255, 24 minutes past the hour. Stay here.
The voice of reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Hey, wrapping up not wrapping it up yet. It's wrapping up the first half hour of the hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason, 7:29 the time. Bottom of the hour news coming up in a second. When we come back, we'll shift gears to City Council member Mr. Bryan Frye back in studio with us as we do on a Tuesday. Lots more to get to. Kind of an interesting conversation. I really want you, progressives, who I know you listen. I know you disagree with me on many things. Even some Republicans disagree with me on this. I'd love to hear your response on the evil for-profit insurance companies providing a service and the cuts that many are saying are detrimental and that are going to let people die in the streets because they're not going to be taken care of, and how that goes against the actual customer service of a private company looking for repeat customers and to be able to take care of their clients. It just doesn't make sense to me. Just that mentality itself does not make sense. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Bottom of the hour news. Your thoughts and calls as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Keeping political talk trendy.
Oh my God, yes, more.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Make it happen today. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Great to have you along on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. We're just cruising right along today. The show's going by way too fast. Starting off your day better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. Yeah, we're that excited. We got our guest in studio real quick, though. Let's take a phone call as we shift gears here. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Yeah. Am I on?
You are. Good morning.
Okay. Yeah, this is Ken. I was calling up about the Medicaid. First off, the problem with, I'm a staunch conservative.
Sure.
But when you have guaranteed clients, as Medicaid does, it's very hard to get a privatized insurance to do what they're supposed to do, because what they do is they cut services, they deny services, and anybody who's ever used Medicaid can tell you that it is a horrible, horrible system. Not to mention that when we started Medicaid and privatized it, did you hear about all the layoffs the state made because they weren't taking care of it anymore? No, you didn't. The state still has its system in place. So we didn't save any money. All we did was hire somebody else to do some of the work.
Sure.
We still kept our whole infrastructure in place. So the state didn't stop their side of Medicaid.
No, you're absolutely right. You're right. I mean, KANCARE, the move towards privatization is a good idea. Now, I know that there's a lot of flaws in it, and I mean, I'm with you. I mean, the Medicaid program itself, a government program of government health care, is a failure of a system in the first place anyway, so you're not going to get the best quality, whether the insurance companies that are actually taking care of part of it are part of that or not. But just Medicaid itself is not a good system, which is why we really need to be looking towards the KANCARE 2.0 to begin to fix some of these issues and start saying, are we going to actually be privatized and get rid of the government bureaucrats that are still involved with it, or are we going to shift things more back towards the government mentality here, but kind of having the hybrid to where we outsource part of the jobs, but yet we didn't cut any of the employees from the government side. I mean, we're really not sure what we're doing here.
Well, and the problem is that the only way that you're going to add another layer of cost, which is what happened with KANCARE, because we didn't cut any of the cost.
Mm-hmm.
All we did was add another layer because now another company has to get paid.
Sure.
The only way to make that happen and still only have the same amount of funds is to reduce the care, and that is the first thing they did, is they sent out all these different rules and regulations that you had to follow and different things that they would no longer cover.
Sure. Which really brings the point up again as why we would want to expand a program like that if we're going to cut the quality and the care and what kind of treatment you're allowed to get under a program by expanding it to allow more people into it when it's not running efficiently in the first place.
Medicaid really, it's like, I mean, as bad as Medicare is, Medicaid's like the poor stepchild of Medicare.
That is true. Ken, I love that. I appreciate it very much so. I mean, you make a great point. You're absolutely right. I mean, when it comes to the quality and when it comes to the care, government's not the answer because they can never provide what you need to. And then when we try and do a hybrid, it's a good idea to start moving privatized. But if we don't actually go privatized and we still have the government involved with it, then did we really go privatized and did it really help anything? So interesting conversation. I appreciate that very much. Let's shift gears a little bit. It is time for our city update. As we do every single Tuesday, City Council member in studio, Mr. Bryan Frye. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful day out there.
You know, first thing I do when I get dressed is always put on really colorful socks. It always gets my day started, right? I've got neon orange today. And so that always puts me in a happy mood. But then when you get weather like this to top it off, wow, it's going to be a gorgeous day.
Can you believe we're already coming up to Memorial Weekend already? This is insane.
I know. I'm looking forward to it. I've been working hard in the yard, getting my the house in shape. My wife's had me on the to-do list, so I need some R&R now.
There you go. Exactly. Big times in the city. We've had a lot of great discussions over the last few weeks when it comes to budgetary issues, when it comes to investment in certain projects, when it came to the fireworks issue, when it comes to the city pools and the recreational side. There's been just a lot of hefty discussion in the city, which is good because we're active and we're growing and we're doing things, which is really good to hear.
Absolutely. The city is on a very good pace for the first 6 months of the year. I was looking back at some newsletters that I write, and at the beginning of the year, I had a list of all the things we could look forward to this year.
Sure.
And it's amazing the things that we've already accomplished in the first 5 months. And so yesterday we had the groundbreaking for the new Spirit Logistics Center, which is this enormous 7-story warehouse that's going to store over 2 million aircraft parts.
Sure.
I mean, you know, I've never seen a 7-story warehouse before.
Just to hold things.
But this makes them more globally competitive, which is, again, further testimony that Spirit is continuing to dominate what they're doing and continuing to invest in Wichita and building. And so that's a great story yesterday, what we did. So a lot of fun.
That is a lot of fun. And the fact that the businesses see the opportunity here, I mean, they could have moved this anywhere. Even with a lot of the manufacturing here, they could have moved their warehouses to across the border. They could have done other things. But the fact that they want to do it here is really encouraging.
It is, but it's also a continual challenge for us. We have to continue to make sure we're developing the workforce because that's very much in demand.
Sure.
And certainly those other communities across the country, like the Oklahoma cities, the Charlotte, North Carolinas, and so forth, they're after these great jobs and these great companies like Spirit and Bombardier and Textron. And if we're not investing in the infrastructure to allow them to continue to grow here, we're going to continue to face that challenge.
Sure. Talk about a little bit of that, because it's been an interesting discussion when it comes to the investment that the city or the county or the state does with certain industries when they want to come here, and the incentives and the perks of the businesses wanting to come here and what the government gives the businesses. And it's always been an interesting discussion on how much investment by, taxpayer money by the city or the county or whoever to invest when a company comes. And then to be able to provide those jobs, is it really the private sector? Is it really the salary coming from the company? Is it coming from the city? I mean, talk about those contracts and how that's all done.
So every city has to face the incentive game. I mean, everyone is challenged with that same incentive play that happens. And we have it right now. We're looking at all of our policies and trying to figure out which ones give us the best return, which ones has the least impact on taxpayers. So, I mean, if we can do things like CIDs or tax increment financing or STAR bonds where there are no new taxes, right? So you're not increasing the mill levy, you're not increasing sales tax, but you're taking growth and using the proceeds of that growth to do the incentives. Then those are a better fit because you're not putting any unnecessary demand on taxpayers. The challenge is you'd like to be able to see that growth used for core services, right? To do the road improvements, to do the police and fire staffing and so forth.
Sure.
But you have to continue that cycle of keeping those companies here and recruiting new companies, getting Cargill to stay here, and that 800 new jobs at good salaries. Spirit, the 1,000 new jobs that they're adding, that has a multiplier effect, and that creates additional jobs down the line for other services and so forth that needs to help those employees. So you've got to do those in order to keep them. So it's a constant cycle. Every community has to deal with it.
Sure.
It's not like we can go out and win the lottery and pay for all these things, right? We're not going to do that. But we have to be very cautious and careful with our money and making sure that we're making the right incentive plays that are giving us a better return on that investment. We just can't go out and do every incentive package or every request that's given to us and say, yeah, we'll do it. We have to make sure we balance it out and figure out, is this the best return on the taxpayer money? So
sure. It's an interesting game to be played when it comes to that incentive package for a lot of the companies. Although, like you mentioned, there are some that are like Spirit that there's very little investment from the city side of it to the county side of it, but they just genuinely want to be here and they see the opportunity here, regardless of the incentive packages or not.
No, don't kid yourself. The incentive package does help.
Sure,
certainly does. But again, because of the quality of the workforce that we have here, the infrastructure that they already have in place, right? Certainly another community would love to have a company the size of Spirit, but they're not going to have that infrastructure that's already built out, and they can't offer enough incentives to build up that. Sure. They can do smaller pieces, certainly, but when you look at the bigger picture, you just can't pick up 11,000 people and move them very quickly, especially the manufacturing scale that they're doing.
Sure.
So, So, yes, we look at every incentive package, every proposal that's brought to us very carefully. We have an economic development staff, internal, that manages that. And, again, we look at all the different things that are offered that we have in our tool chest and see which ones make the most sense. Some are more sales tax driven. Some are property tax driven. Rarely do we see anybody that comes to us and gets everything in the arsenal. Right. We have to very delicately pick the ones that make the most sense and do that every day. But today we're having a workshop where we really review all those in more detail. How can we add some more clawbacks in it to make sure that companies are putting that investment in here and it's lasting us the amount of time that we need it to, and then it's not taking the money and then running.
Sure.
Right? Because we just can't fritter away that stuff, right? We got to make sure that it's like our own pocketbook, because it is.
If we're going to do it, then we're going to invest in something that's going to be long term.
Right. So we have to make sure that we're doing the right calculations and putting in those clawbacks so that way we are protecting the taxpayer.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
That's a discussion that's been happening for the last few months. It's going to continue today. And then we also have another workshop on what we call our urban infill area. And this is the centralized neighborhoods, right? So if it's bordered on the west by Ridge Road, north 21st Street, east I think is Woodlawn, and then south is Pawnee. We call that the central area. And that's really the core of Wichita, not all the outskirts. It's the middle part of the city. And when you think about that, we've got a lot of investment in that urban core already. All the storm drains are in place. The roads are there. All the water stuff it's all built.
Sure.
Right? And so you've already captured that expense. So if you can continue to develop those areas, those vacant lots, those empty buildings, and get people to start utilizing them, your return on investment's much stronger than it would be on the outskirts. And so trying to focus, and we've got a great group of volunteers and professionals made up throughout the city to help us figure out other plays and other ways to incentivize and continue to and lower the red tape.
Sure.
Right. And make it easier for people to take those vacant buildings and those vacant lots and reinvest in them and get them activated again, because then you can, you'll get higher property taxes. You'll get more people living in the core area, which, again, saves money because you don't have to have as much other infrastructure put in play. So
sure,
that's a discussion we continue to have to make that core area more developable, but also more livable. And so that's a discussion that we've been having for a couple of years. We have an update on that today. And that one excites me because you're seeing great things happen in our downtown. A lot of drive down Douglas and you see it from Delano all the way to, past Hydraulic, past East High, Clifton Square. So you continue to see the downtown area just continue to develop, and it's fantastic. But we got to start stretching it a little bit further in that core area and seeing more growth and more activation.
Expanding and upgrading is what we're seeing really throughout the entire state, or throughout the entire city, which is nice, as you mentioned, with the investments that we've already done. Now making them, kind of really just shining them and making them nice and polished, so that way it's more incentivized for people to want to go down to those areas. I mean, between businesses that we're seeing grow, I mean, do you see us expand the way that we need to see a city expand?
Well, again, we have to be very careful because we just don't want to just incentivize.
Exactly.
This is hard as hickory sometimes, just trying to figure out what is the right play. Because we don't have an endless supply of cash just to give away to people, and that's not something I'm in favor of doing anyway.
Sure.
We have to be very diligent and very careful about it, and it has to be that incentive that makes sense, and it's going to give us that better return on our investment. We've had some that are as high as 50, 60% of the city's portion of the project being incentivized dollars. That's way too high, in my opinion. I'd like it to see less than 25%, if possible, and go even lower. But we have to do those things to continue to get people to stay here and continue business. Again, you're going to get your most job growth by building your local businesses and getting them to succeed.
Exactly.
Much easier to do that than trying to woo big companies to come in here.
Sure.
Take your local companies, grow them, make them prosperous, and you'll see much better benefits than trying to bring in outsiders.
Not only that, but it's nice to see the local business thrive and grow anyways, which is what we want to see. I mean, when the big companies come in, it's kind of the icing on the cake sort of thing, and it helps out. But, I mean, you're right. When the small businesses are really growing and expanding and you see them go from one shop to 5 shops all around the city of Wichita, I mean, that's really encouraging. That's really good. We want to see some of that.
Right, and that's where your best growth happens.
Exactly.
Is when it's that organic, when it's coming up from the smaller communities and the smaller businesses, getting them to grow and reinvest and hire and continue to build. We've got some great success stories that have come national, right?
Sure.
And who's to say the next great national story doesn't come out of Wichita? It happens when we develop and invest in our own.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, hey, come on, we're going to turn into the next McDonald's or the next Walmart coming out of Wichita, and that's a huge opportunity that we can actually see. Got a couple minutes left here, but that's all going to be discussed today at the City Council meeting, as, of course, you guys are going to continuously talk about the budgetary issues, as you mentioned before, in ways that we can continue to invest in the city. If people want to show up to the City Council meeting today, how can they do so?
So today's the fourth Tuesday of the month, and on fourth Tuesdays, we always have what we call workshops. And so they start at 9:30.
Okay.
It's a short consent agenda meeting, and then we get into the workshop. So a little bit later start than our typical one, but it's at 9:30.
It's more informative than it is debate type.
Right, yeah. There's not a lot of there's no opportunity for public input, really. It's just kind of a listen and learn.
Sure.
A lot of paper,
there's
a lot of PowerPoint, but it's all good. And but we start at 9:30 today.
9:30 today. It's going to be good. And as you mentioned, great information just to, at least even if you're curious about how some of the incentive programs or some of these things work, just to understand it. Today's a good day to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Bryan Frye, City Council member. Always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy the workshops today.
Yep, and have a safe holiday weekend.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day to you guys going out of town, staying around. What are you doing?
I'm just going to relax.
Just relaxing. You're kicking back and having an adult beverage with a cigar, right?
Put the feet up, yep.
Hey, I like that idea. Good stuff. Bryan, we always appreciate it, my friend. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday.
Andy.
Always a good time. 8 minutes at the top of the hour. We've got some calls on the line. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. This is The Voice of Reason on a Tuesday. Stay right here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. When we come back after the top of the hour, retired Lieutenant Colonel, state senator as well, also a Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, Steve Fitzgerald. He's going to join us here in just a bit. We got about a minute and a half to the top of the hour. Let's sneak in a phone call. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Going once. Going twice. Give us a call back. We'd love to hear from you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We'll get Steve Fitzgerald coming on at the top of the hour. Plus, I do want to remind you one more time, you're running out of time. You're running out of time. It's going to be coming here very soon, but the KQAM KGSO first annual cookbook is right around the corner. If you have a recipe, maybe a grilling recipe or a barbecue recipe, if you have a dessert, a dinner, a breakfast, even a drink, come on. Yeah, I may be submitting a couple of my drink mixes that I enjoy. Then we'll get those on there. But if you want to submit your recipe to the cookbook, you're more than welcome to do so. Email recipe@kqamradio.com, recipe@kqamradio.com. You got a couple of weeks to do that before we close that out and start building the cookbook. It's going to be out here relatively soon. Local restaurants, businesses are going to be sponsoring it, advertising in it. They'll have coupons, gift certificates. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be something you're not going to want to miss, and you have an opportunity to do that. And when you do, by the way, and you submit your recipe, then you get a chance to win a brand new pellet grill, hat tip to Wichita Tractor. Yeah, how much better can you actually get? Wichita Tractor providing a pellet grill to give away to you just by submitting a recipe. We had an email issue. I got it all fixed, so now you can email recipe@kqamradio.com. Do it soon. Get your name in there. It's going to be pretty awesome. When we come back, Lieutenant Colonel, also state senator and candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, Steve Fitzgerald. He's going to join us here in just a bit. Looking forward to chatting with him. This is The Voice of Reason. Hour number 3 right around the corner, baby. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
Do you think that there would be a federal government in this administration right now if we have more states, whether it's Kansas or anywhere in the country, say, you know what, I believe that I'm going to go ahead and expand my Medicaid program and I'm going to look for federal aid in order to make that happen? What do you think they're going to say as we're trying to limit some of these social programs with a Republican majority in both chambers and a Republican presidency? What do you think is going to happen?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV channel 2610. What's up? Welcome in. Good morning to you. It is a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday as we're rolling right along. The show is going faster than we know what to do with, advancing conservatism on a daily basis and waking you up unlike any other program in the Mid-America region. Welcome in. 8 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, we'd love to hear from you today. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. We want to thank again Bryan Frye, Wichita City Council member, joining the show in the last half hour, and we'll get to some of the other issues that we've talked about before. But I want to shift gears for just a second. By the way, the Facebook Live feed is up and rolling as well. You can go there, facebook.com/1480KQAM. Like it, share it, leave a comment, call me a jerk, say good morning. I don't really care, but we'd love to hear from you on there. I want to shift gears a little bit as we've been focusing on many of the elections and the primary being the most important election that we can have. I'm going to continue to harp on that as we understand the importance of setting the tone. You cannot set the tone when the candidate's already chosen. Then you just kind of have to go along to get along, and you just have to go along with whatever's been chosen. Now is the time for us to choose the best candidates, and my goal is to try and get on as many primary candidates as we can in all different elections all across the entire state of Kansas, so you have the information to understand, to know, and to be not just complacent, but excited, to be passionate. That's what our goal is. We need to be pumped up and excited when we call for activism. Activism is what it's all about, and that's what we try and do here on the show. And I'm really excited to have our next guest on the show. He is a retired lieutenant colonel. He is a state senator for the state of Kansas. He is a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District up on the north end of the state. Mr. Steve Fitzgerald with us. Steve, how are you, my friend?
Never better. Appreciate it, Andy. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your introduction on that. Picking the best candidate is the reason for having a primary, and getting the party pumped up is essential to winning the general election. And we have to win that general election. We have to keep this congressional seat.
That is very true. And I got to say, the 2nd District is a very odd district because it covers a lot of ground. And I want to talk about that in just a second. But I do want to, as you are a current state senator as well, I got to get your take on this legislative session with the budgetary debates that we had. We increased spending over $1 billion again this year without, I'm not sure where we're going to get the revenue for that stuff. But just a quick blurb. What was your take on this session for the state of Kansas that we just wrapped up?
Well, my take on this session is the same as it was on the previous session last year, and that is, going back to your point, primaries count. The primary the previous time in 2016 brought in some Republicans who, quite frankly, probably should have D instead of R after their name, and we lost a lot of ground. We lost ground on the tax area. We lost ground in the budget area. We lost ground in several other areas as well, mainly because of the primaries of 2016. Your point in opening this segment is exactly spot on. We've got to get the best candidates. We've got to get the conservative candidates. Otherwise, we're going to pay for it. And we did pay for it this last legislative session. Mm-hmm. The budget went up, as you mentioned, went up significantly, and particularly on school funding, it went up. And we don't know where the top is on that because the Supreme Court has not yet come out and told us whether it's happy with what we've done or not. And taxes continue to go up. So most important thing people can do is get involved, get informed, and vote. And it's the primary is where the action really is. That's exactly right. And that's what we try and advocate for all the time, because you're right. I mean, the primary is really the most important. Afterwards, I mean, we do the best that we can in the general election just to try and get the party, try and get somewhat of our agenda through. But the primary allows the party, if people are upset with the party, if people want changes within the party, as people we hear about the whole independent move, the primary is the way that we can get excited and pumped up. So I'm really excited about this. And as you mentioned, that budgetary issue, it's a debate that's going on not only at the state level, but at the federal level as well. I got to ask you, as a current state senator, what led you to the point? First off, talk a little bit about yourself and what led you to the point to where you said you needed to run for this congressional seat and fight that same fight at the federal level. Well, Andy, the main thing is the same thing basically happened there as happened when I ran for the Senate seat. And that is, I've supported Republican conservative candidates for a long time. You might know I'm the co-chair and co-founder of the Republican Men's Leadership Series. Our job is to find and train good men in the Republican Party to take leadership. We're a very conservative group. We've trained over 200 men for political leadership in Kansas in the last 7 years. We've got another session coming up this year, and there's still time for men to get their application in. But I couldn't find somebody who was ready, willing, and able to run for the Senate, so I ran myself. In this congressional seat, I checked around and talked to a number of people who I thought were going to be decent candidates. Didn't get a good feeling back from any of them that they were going to run, and therefore I put my hat in the ring. And I'm still in there. I'm going to tell you right now, I believe I've got the best chance of beating Paul Davis, and I am the conservative candidate that can take this and can keep this congressional seat. We have to keep the seat. The Democrats are going all in to take back the House of Representatives because they're desperate to stop this president and to stop what's going on right now and to keep us from getting our country back. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm in it, and that's what I'm trying to do. Do you see, they talk about at the national front, the blue wave that's coming across the nation, how they're going to try and take, as you mentioned, the majority of the House and try and stop Donald Trump. They're going to try and block some of the Republicans and sway some of these seats. I don't see it. I don't see the blue wave happening, especially in the state of Kansas. We are a relatively red state for the most part, kind of an odd red at times, but we are a red state. And as you mentioned, we need to maintain this second congressional seat along with many of the other seats that we have in the state as well. But from your perspective and watching the campaigns and how some of this is done, do you see the blue wave actually happening? To some degree, I do. Keep in mind that there are a number of things that are going in that are favorable to the Democrats. and that's just historical cycles. The one that everybody knows is that in the first off-year election of a new presidency, the party not in power normally picks up seats in Congress. Not always, but normally, and not a huge number, but it can be. So there's that. There's also the fact that this is a gubernatorial election year, and we've had no Republican governor replace a Republican governor or a Democrat governor replace a Democrat governor ever since we went to the 4-year governor cycle back in the 1970s.
Sure.
So both cycles are in favor, and these are just historical cycles. They're in favor of the Democrats. Now, the Democrats believe that Donald Trump is terribly unpopular and that he is constantly getting himself in trouble and that they're going to take advantage of that. What they don't see is that Donald Trump is very popular, his popularity is rising, and that they continually play into his ability to handle the situation at the national level. And so, therefore, what they see coming up is a big blue wave. I'm with you. I don't see it being there quite as bad as they would like to have it. But I do think we cannot be complacent. We have to expect that we could lose it. And it's like anything else you're in. You run like you're behind. You always run like you're behind.
Exactly. You got to have that fire under you, or else it ain't going to happen. Talk about, if you get into the seats, talk about some of the priorities that you'd like to see at the federal level. A little bit of a background for you as well. I mean, being a military leader, being a state senator, also being a small business owner, what priorities would you have going into Washington, D.C., and what you'd like to see to fight for?
In broad terms, my basic point is just simple conservatism. Reduce the impact and the involvement of the federal government at all levels, reduce their spending to focus on those things that the federal government is supposed to be doing, and get out of the state's business and back away from what's going on as far as private enterprise and individual freedom is concerned. That's the broad view of the whole thing. Specifically, the federal government is responsible for national defense. That's its number one job. And very frankly, my experience, I've got 2 kids in the service, spent my retired military officer myself, and I live in a military town, so I hear it all the time. We don't have the military that we need for the commitments that we have. Now, a lot of people might say we need to reduce our commitments, but I'll tell you, it's a very dangerous world, and when things start to go wrong, they can go wrong fast. So we need to be very careful about that. But we can't have a military that's overstretched and constantly being put in a position where it's not able to meet its mission the way that it should. We've seen it with the Navy with a couple of collisions at sea. That shouldn't happen in the United States Navy. And it's a matter of overtaxing them, too many missions, not enough resources, not enough training time, not enough parts. Same thing's happening in the other services as well. And we've got to fix that, and we've got to make sure that we take care of that so that we do have the defense that we need. That defense also includes the borders, and not just along the border with Mexico, but also with enforcing our laws with people coming in, overstaying visas, etc. If we don't enforce our borders, we don't have a country. Simple as that. And so those are the things that the federal government has got to do and is not doing as well as it should.
Sure.
The rest of the things, I'd be more than interested in finding ways to cut back and get the federal government out of the state's business.
Well, that's very true. And I mean, we need to start going back to some of the sovereign states where states can make some of their own decisions as opposed to the federal government imposing it onto them. I'm glad you brought up the military because it's something that we haven't really talked about or has really been in the limelight or the mainstream for a little bit now when it comes to the budget and the financing and taking care of the military. I mean, one of the actual legit purposes of the federal government is for national defense and to be able to take care of the people. And if we can't do that through a sufficiently funded military, then we're going to have a problem. Then you look at the entire federal budget, 60% of the federal budget's going towards social programs, less than 20% of it's actually going towards military. And then whenever we talk about cutting the federal budget, they always look towards the military. So from your experience, I mean, you were in the military, you said your sons are in the military. Their experience right now, I mean, do we I don't know. Do we need to spend more money on the military? Do we need to upgrade the equipment and technology to where we don't need to spend as much? What direction do we need to go to make sure that our military is sufficient and adequate the way we need it to be?
Well, thank you. One son and one daughter, by the way.
Fantastic.
And the daughter, by the way, just recently entered the retired roles as well. The military has a problem with making sure that it spends its resources as wisely as possible, just like every other governmental agency. I saw enough waste, fraud, and abuse while I was in the military to not be sensitive to that. It has to do better all the time, just as every other agency. That being said, the fact of the matter is, I think that the military probably spends its money better than virtually any other bureaucracy or government program or agency. But we can't fail in the military. If you fail with the post office, your letters come late. If you fail with various other things, you have some problems. But if you fail with the military, you can lose the country. Sure. So this is one of those no-fail situations. Also, failure in the military very often can mean loss of lives very easily, very quickly, because everything they do is dangerous. Sure. So we have to be careful what we do there. I think we can I'm not calling for a large increase in funding for the military, but the funding for the military has got to be adequate, and it has to be predictable. The military is constantly investing in new programs, new equipment, new things, because it has to stay pretty close to the leading edge. And to do that, it has to have a predictable funding cycle. And quite frankly, in the last 8-9 years, it has not been. It has been unpredictable, and that really increases the problem with being efficient and effective in the use of the dollars that are there. The other thing, Andy, is not just money, but it's personnel policies. We don't treat our soldiers and our airmen or Marines as well as we should in terms of taking care of them and giving them the respect we should and giving them the programs that we should. And our policy is in using the armed forces as a laboratory for social policies. I think that is very harmful, and that needs to be eliminated as well. We need to return to having a military that's what we envision when we think about the way the Army and the Navy should be operating.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, there's too many stories coming out that are just myself, other veterans can't believe what we're hearing. So we need to get this back on track. Get back to business and do it correctly.
The military is not supposed to be that social experiment, which is what they've kind of turned it into. We're talking with Steve Fitzgerald, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, also state senator for the state of Kansas, candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. Steve, can you stick around for a few more? Can we take a commercial break and come back with you here in just a few minutes?
Absolutely. I'm yours.
Perfect. Hang tight here. We'll get to you in just a few minutes. I want to talk on, of course, some of the other big news, of course, the farm bill happening at the federal level and some of the agricultural stuff and some of the social spending that we can work on at that federal level. As we mentioned, candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, Steve Fitzgerald, on the line with us for a few more minutes. Take a break. Your thoughts and calls as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
6 minutes past the hour. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today on a #Patriotic Tuesday. Rolling right along here. I got a few minutes left with Steve Fitzgerald, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, also state senator and candidate for the GOP for the 2nd Congressional District, as we talk about what to fight for, what to do at the federal level once we get in there. And Steve, I got to ask, I mean, the latest, of course, the big bill was the farm bill. They tried to talk about putting work requirements in for some of the food stamps. I still don't understand why we call it a farm bill when 90% of the funding goes towards food stamps instead of, I don't know, agriculture during a farm bill. But nonetheless, the question I have for you is getting in there. If you get in there, what can we do to start weeding out some of this crazy spending, start limiting some of these social programs, and actually start focusing on the real priorities like, I don't know, taking care of our agriculture and our farmers?
Yeah, Andy, you put your finger on it, but here's the situation, and I think you probably know it. and that is that there was a coalition back at when we started this thing that put the social programs and the farm program together. One part of the Farm Bill is nutrition, and that goes to food stamps, or what we call SNAP. And it's in order to give it the political support that it needs to get through. What it has resulted from that is exactly what you described, and that is what we call the Farm Bill. Really does not focus as well as it should on the farms. It doesn't focus on agriculture. Instead, it's focused on food stamps, basically, the SNAP program. And so, therefore, in the Farm Bill, we're talking about work requirements for people who get food stamps. In Kansas, we did that under TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. We put in a work requirements. We put in training requirements, and similar sort of thing I think needs to go in for the food stamps. We need to help people get out of poverty. We need to try and keep working to reduce the number of people who are on federal or state assistance and get them on their feet and get them productive for themselves and for their families. As far as the Farm Bill is concerned, I think we need to focus on that part of the Farm Bill, which is there for the agriculture. The United States is still an agricultural country, an agricultural economy, and in Kansas, that is definitely the case.
Amen.
We produce better products, more products at a better price than anywhere else in the world. That's what we do, and we need to make sure that we maintain that. And that's one of the things that the Farm Bill ought to be focused on. And I would try to make that shift as quickly as possible away from the social programs if we can, and get it towards a Farm Bill that focuses on the farm. But I have to tell you, the thing I'd be concerned about is politically losing support for the Farm Bill.
Absolutely. Steve Fitzgerald, FitzgeraldForCongress.com. FitzgeraldForCongress.com is the website. Candidate for the 2nd Congressional District up in the North End. Steve, I really appreciate you joining the show, my friend, with us. We'd love to get you back on before the primaries.
Anytime you want, Andy, let me know.
I love it. We appreciate that very much. That's Steve Fitzgerald there, Lieutenant Colonel, retired state senator for the state of Kansas and candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. We'll take a break. Bottom of the hour news coming up. We'll wrap up the show. When we come back, your thoughts and calls. This is The Voice of Reason.
Spreading the love on a daily basis.
And I will always love you.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
I tell you what, if nothing else will wake you up in the morning, it'll be my beautiful singing voice. No, that's not me. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the program today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. Thanks again to Steve Fitzgerald, retired Lieutenant Colonel, state senator, and candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, for joining the program today. We'll get him back on the show along with some of the other candidates we've had a decent amount on. We'll get more of them on as the time allows. It's really important, and I know that we don't necessarily broadcast into the 2nd District here for the airwaves, but we have the online streaming, the Facebook, and it's a really big seat. And as Steve mentioned, he's absolutely right. We need to conserve that seat. We need to maintain a Republican seat in that one. It is a very wild district. It's a very diverse district, and we need to be able to maintain a Republican seat in there. We cannot allow Kansas to see a Democrat take over a seat. We need to be very wary of that. So that is an extremely important seat, and anything we can do to help maintain as a Republican, that's what we need to do. Your thoughts and calls, it's open lines to you for the rest of the program. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy.
Helen, how are you?
You recognize my squeaky voice.
Absolutely. No, what's on your mind?
Well, this Fitzgerald sounds like he's tough enough to go up there and battle these jerks.
Well, I tell you, I am so glad, honestly, that I don't live in the 2nd District, because there are some really, really great candidates. Steve Fitzgerald is an absolute rock-solid conservative. Last week we had on Steve Watkins, who is a kind of an outsider, another military guy that hasn't held an elected seat, but he's had a lot of experience on fighting and on the military experience that he's had as well. We have, we've talked to Tyler Tannehill, another military guy, and there are some solid conservatives up there. It's going to be a tough choice for them. What they need to do is they really need to start looking at these candidates very, very strongly and seeing personality and content and what they're going to do, and start uniting behind a conservative one way or another, because it's going to be a very wild race for sure.
Yeah, what I want to know is, when are we going to get enough of our Congress people to have the courage to stand up against these unconstitutional activist judges? It's getting out of control.
You're right. It is an ongoing battle that's going to go on, I feel, for a really long time, both at the statewide level and at the federal level. Look, the courts, the courts themselves, standing up to them is going to be the challenge, because right now they make a decision and everybody changes their policies based on what the courts tell them to do so. And until we do start fighting that, which is going to take a really long time to actually happen, then you're right, we're not going to see proper policy. We need to change as well, though, too, because we have the tendency that whenever there's something that we don't like, then we take it to court and we try and resolve it in the courts. And we've given the courts, both through the separation of powers at the government that we don't really abide by any longer, and by the general public, we've turned to the courts and given them more power than what they were anticipated to have. So it's going to be a long haul to be able to fix that.
Right. I have a question.
Sure.
Where is it written in the Constitution that the judicial power and the presidential executive power have the exact same power that the Congress does? I keep hearing that there are three equal powers and stuff, but where is that written in the Constitution?
Well, they have equal powers in the sense that they are allotted very specific powers, and they're able to keep each other in check, which is why we have our checks and balance system. So, for example, if Congress passes a piece of legislation that they like and they send it to the executive branch can hold them in check with their power by vetoing that bill. So that way, if he doesn't like it or if she doesn't like it, then they're able to veto it and it goes back to Congress. They're able to keep the executive branch in check by, if they still really feel very adamant about that, they're able to override that veto with a 3/4 vote in both chambers, sort of thing. So there's that checks and balance there. The judicial branch comes into play by, if they feel that there is a certain piece of legislation that's pushed by either the executive branch or by the legislative branch, that they're able to come out and say, wait a second, this is not constitutional because it doesn't abide by what the Constitution was meant to be for. Now, that's again all by interpretation, but a lot of people think that that's it, that's done. And that once they claim that, bam, unconstitutional, then that's the law. The fact is, though, is that we have checks and balances over the judicial branch as well, and they can either ignore it by votes in the legislature, or they can continue to modify it or tweak it a little bit, or they can vote to override the Supreme Court. So we still have that checks and balance to where each one of them are able to try and hold each other accountable for their actions. But yet we don't do that anymore. We've really given the judicial branch more power than anybody else, to where a random district circuit judge in California can come out and say, oh, Donald Trump, president of the head of the executive branch, we're going to say that what you're trying to do with these refugee bans and with these different travel bans that you're putting on certain nations, that is unconstitutional because it's racist and it's against certain religions, and we're going to block you. And one random district judge in somewhere in the nation supposedly has enough power to block what the executive branch as a whole is able to do. And that's not the way this was intended to be.
But the Constitution says that only the Congress has the power to remove either the president, vice president, or any judicial office.
Yes.
Any of the inferior offices. Only the Congress has the power to remove these people
yes.
from office. So it sounds to me like they've got a lot more power than what they're not exercising.
They do. You're right. I mean, Congress has that power, and they don't want to exercise it, whether they're not aware of it, whether they don't care, whether they just don't see it as a need. But you're right. They have the power to do so. That's why, I mean, the impeachment process, that's another example of the checks and balance where Congress has the authority to remove someone in extreme circumstances over the executive branch. And that's what we did with Bill Clinton and a few others throughout history. That's what they're trying to do to Donald Trump. If the Democrats get enough votes and actually get enough seats in there, that's their goal, is to try and use that power. But we could potentially, now the state constitution's a little bit different, and I don't know exactly how we could remove someone from the Supreme Court at the state level, because that's a whole nother debate and a whole nother discussion. But at the federal level, yes, Congress has that power, and it's just a matter of being able to practice it and have enough support.
Constitutionally, that we can. Constitutionally, our state representatives, our Congress and Senate and representatives, they can remove these, what is it, in Article 3, Section 1, that during, that they can retain their office during good behavior. Well, they're not behaving very well. The judges, they're violating the Constitution. They're usurping their limited power
left and right,
trying to take over.
Right.
So
now,
our Congress can say, hey, you're out of office.
But they're not going to. They're not going to. And our legislature right now, between voting on continuous increases in funding for education, between still abiding by the Supreme Court. I mean, come on, just listen to what Steve Fitzgerald mentioned. I mean, we haven't heard what the Supreme Court's going to say and what they're going to do. The Supreme Court very well could call up and say, hey, you know what, your guys' funding for education, even though you increased it by $600 million and it's going to be accrued yearly to, for the next however many years, and it's going to be close to $1 billion, it's not enough. It's time for a special session. We're going to call you guys back in, and you guys have to address this. And it's up to the legislatures to ignore that and say, sorry, we're not going to. We're going to pass a constitutional amendment to limit you because you're usurping your powers, and that's not okay. And you're right. It is a power struggle between all three branches, which is a good thing. And I like the struggle of powers between the three branches, because that was the intention of the founders at the federal level when they said, you know what, we don't want any of these branches to get more powerful than the rest. We're concerned about legislators that are usurping their power. We're concerned about an executive branch that's going to turn into a king or a tyrant. We're concerned about judges and the judicial branch becoming more powerful because they can interpret however they want to based on political activism, and that's a very, very dangerous thing. But it's happened on all three fronts.
And that's why, you were talking about how you like hard rock and stuff like that. Well, have you ever heard of the Shinedown State of My Head?
I don't know if I've heard that song. I know Shinedown. I'll have to listen to that one. Shinedown.
It's a great. It's a very inspiring song for those who want to get out there and just fight for their rights.
Hey, I love it. See, you know what? You even are getting into rock. I love it. Or getting everybody into it. How much rock and roll do you listen to?
Oh my gosh! I grew up on rock and roll.
See, that's the way we roll, baby. I love it. Helen, I appreciate the call very much. So there it is. See, another one, Shinedown. I mean, that's a good metal band. That's a good mainstream metal band. I dig that. I love it. If you missed it, the first hour of the program, we commented on the Billboard Awards. And I don't know if you heard it or not. Sunday, they had the Billboard Music Awards, and I posed the question, first off, why people listen to the contemporary stuff with an electronic beat that's not personalized in any way, shape, or form, and wouldn't that get old? But Kelly Clarkson came out. She's the one that kind of hosted the Billboard Awards, and she had to, of course, mention the gun control after the shooting that happened in Texas on Friday. This is what she had to say.
Before we start tonight's show, there's something I'd like to... This is going to be so hard. There's something I'd like to say about the tragedy Friday at Santa Fe High School. So sorry. I'm a Texas girl, and my home state has had so much heartbreak over this past year. And once again, y'all, we're grieving for more kids that have died for just an absolute no reason at all. And tonight, they wanted me to say that obviously we want to pray for all the victims, we want to pray for their families, but they also wanted me to do a moment of silence. And I'm so sick of moment of silence. Like, God, it's not working. Like, obviously. So, sorry. So why don't we not do a moment of silence? Why don't we do a moment of action? Why don't we do a moment of change? Why don't we change what's happening? Because it's horrible. And And mamas and daddies should be able to send their kids to school, to church, to movie theaters, to clubs. You should be able to live your life without that kind of fear. So we need to do better. We need to do better. So people are failing our children. We're failing our communities. We're failing their families. I can't imagine. I have 4 children. I cannot imagine getting that phone call or that knock on the door. So instead of a moment of silence, I want to respect them and honor them. With tonight, y'all, let's, in your community, where you live, your friends, everybody, let's have a moment of action. Let's have a moment of change.
There it is. That was Kelly Clarkson at the Billboard Awards on Sunday as they were talking about the gun control activism and the moment of action, not a moment of silence, which, get your thoughts on that. First off, the ratings were down for the Billboard Awards, lower than they've ever been. 9% drop from last year, and last year was a record low for them as well. Basketball, for crying out loud, beat them on Sunday when it came to the ratings, was a 5.8 share, something ridiculous like that for basketball. Now, some of you may enjoy basketball. I think out of any of the sports, that's my least favorite, and I won't watch any of that. But the fact that that's what beat the Billboard Music Awards kind of shows. Are we sick and tired of the liberal progressives wanting to actually try and use their propaganda with these get-togethers, the Billboards, the Emmys, the Grammys, all these different ridiculous events, go there, preach about their nice little propaganda, and then hope everybody actually listens to them. Kind of interesting. So your thoughts on that? Also, Helen brings up a really great point. We haven't done this in a while. The separation of powers from the government, the 3 branches, the checks and balances, each one of them having their very specific powers on what they're supposed to do and what they're able to do. If you remember, the way the Constitution's actually written, it gives them very specific duties. Not saying these are the things you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to touch on anything else is open game. But it says these are the very specific duties, and other than outside of that, then they're back to the states and the states' prerogatives to actually decide on some of these things. We need to get back to that. We really need to get back to that. We can fight that. We can actually make a difference, and we can actually be aware of that. We just have to be educated, and we have to understand, and we have to learn about the powers of the federal government and what powers the state governments are supposed to have. Do you remember anywhere in the Constitution someplace saying that we're going to have a bureaucratic state where we have heads of agencies appointed by the executive branch that are working for the executive branch, where we're going to have the Environmental Protection Agency that are setting laws based on executive orders, that we're going to have a Department of Energy that's going to pass laws and regulations that the executive branch is going to be able to sign through in an executive order and be able to put in place? No, that's not intended. If you want environmental protection, that is a state mandate. As much as I despise California for having insane amount of taxes, for having ridiculous fines, for having your odors from your grill float over to the neighbors and they call and complain about it and they can actually sign you a fine for that, as much as I take shots at them, if they really want that, that's what the state's there for. The state is supposed to make those decisions, not the federal government. In any way, shape, or form, shut it down. Shut down the Department of Education. Shut down the Environmental Protection Agency. Shut down the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Shut down the Department of Energy. Shut down the Department of this. All of it. We don't need it, nor is it even constitutional. But we live in a different time. We live in a different world. And we've allowed it to get out of hand little by little by little. And until we actually be aware of it, we begin fighting it, ignoring it, and doing our own thing as a state and as a legislature, then we're not going to actually gain any traction. Got to take a break. 51 minutes past 9 minutes to the top of the hour. Your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Here's how. Start by taking a soil sample. Your local county extension office will do an inexpensive analysis, telling you exactly what fertilizer you need and if it changed since last year. Then ask your garden center before you reseed to be sure you have the best and latest variety. New, stronger drought and heat-resistant types are constantly being introduced. And when things start to grow, don't mow too low. Cutting grass too short, especially the first time, can harm the lawn and lead to root damage, making it more susceptible to plant disease, numerous insects, and the heat of a scorching sun. As a rule of thumb, never trim off more than a third. Finally, an inch of water once a week is enough. To avoid overwatering, set out a rain gauge to be sure Mother Nature hasn't already done so. For more tips, visit our website at onthehouse.com.
Struggling to get in and out of the tub? Worried about falling? You need an American Standard walk-in bath with over 20 comfort and safety features, including an ultra-low entryway, slip-resistant floor, built-in sturdy seat, and 44 massaging air and water jets. Call 800-228-4119 now for your free in-home estimate. And for a limited time, get $1,500 in savings, which includes a free American Standard right height toilet. Call 800-228-4119 today.
By the way, welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up the program today. There is some news on the campaign trail as we continue to track some of these candidates and their decisions and what they're doing on the campaign trail for the governorship. The gubernatorial race, Republican candidate Ken Seltzer chose his running mate, small business owner, works on the board of the Kansas Chamber's Leadership Kansas, Jennifer Sanderson is the choice that he's made for his running mate in the gubernatorial race. She brings a small business owner's experience to fixing an overreaching government, a wealth of financial management, education, and a mother's commitment to a better world for the next generation. So there it is, running mates being chosen slowly but surely for the gubernatorial race, and that's a big one right here that came out as of yesterday. So Ken Seltzer, Republican candidate, currently insurance commissioner for the state of Kansas, choosing Jennifer Sanderson as a small business owner and on the board of the Kansas Chamber's Leadership Kansas, to choosing her to be the running mate for the race. So that's the big news happening as of yesterday. We'll have more information on that one. We'll get Ken and hopefully Jennifer on the program to talk about the campaign and get a little detail, a little background, understand who these individuals are and your choice when it comes to choosing for the primary race. Again, the primary race being so important. I know that a lot of people don't even focus on the election time, don't even focus on candidates until the general election, but your choice is already gone by then. Your choice is already gone. Again, I stand firm by my choice of party over person when it comes to the general election. The primary election, Andy, I don't like the party. Andy, I'm upset about the party. Okay, you're upset about the party. You don't like the party. What have you done to fix it? Have you joined the party? Are you involved in the local party? Are you trying to set the platform for the party? Are you voting for people in the primary for the party to set the tone for them? Because remember, the elected officials in the party are the ones that represent what the party actually stands for. What are they going to fight for? What are they going to do? And as they're a representative of that party, that's when we do that. Your choice is already done by that time. You only got one candidate. The primary's it, baby. Let's make it happen. Let's have some fun. Let's get pumped up and excited. Let's feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger making an action movie. That's how excited we need to be going into election season, which is our favorite time of the entire year. As usual, we appreciate you hanging out with us today. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.